Swaba, welcome to this week's edition of Ghana in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian broadcaster, writer, journalist, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And in this week's edition of Ghana in Focus, it's a special. We are examining the legacy of Ghana's president, Nana Akufo-Addo. So in the dying months of his presidency, because Ghana goes to the polls in less than 5 months' time, that actually fact, Ghana goes to the polls in or on December 7th. We thought it appropriate to look at the legacy of Ghana's current president, Nana Akufo-Addo. And also today is a Republic Day, a day when Ghana became a republic on July the 1st, 1960. So this is the apt time to look at the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo, bearing in mind that he has a few months left to be in office, because like I said, the Ghana elections take place on December the 7th, and we'll be giving you another special on the election itself, what's at stake, and why it is such an important election near the time. All right, so this is this theme of today's Ghana in Focus, looking at the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo. And so before we start the podcast, if you like what you hear, please share to your friends, family, social media networks. You know, we're on the YouTube. Let's look out for Ghana Africa in Focus. We want to get 200 subscribers by the end of the year. So please subscribe to Ghana Africa in Focus on YouTube. We're also on Spotify. Again, we want to get 800 followers on Spotify. So if I've gotten there 500, say thank you to all those on Spotify who are following me. And you can do the same by looking for Ghana Africa in Focus on Spotify. Click follow. Meaning that every time I upload a new podcast, Spotify will notify you. All right. And if you want to do business in Ghana, we do offer a consulting service whereby we can look at your needs and want and make a package for you. We can give you a lot of advice when it comes to doing business in Ghana, despite the harsh climate, how to get your Ghana card, or why you need a Ghana card, where to register your business, etc. So if you do want to book a consultation, I will leave you my email address and the phone notes to the show, and you can just book your consulting period or session, and we can give you a lot of great and invaluable information. And if you want to donate to the show, help the show to continue to grow, so we can continue to bring fantastic content for you from Ghana and from the African continent, then you can subscribe to Ghana Africa in Focus. Just go onto the Ghana Africa in Focus website and look out for that. And you can just click on donate, and you can donate as little as $3 a month to help us with our costs, and also to help us bring you fantastic programming from Ghana and from Africa. All right, now let's get into this week's podcast, looking at the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo, part 1. Yes, there's a part 1. We do the part 2 next week because there's a lot that we can't cramp in, 30, 35 minutes. So we're going to do a part 1 and part 2 so that we can take time to go have a deeper analysis of the legacy of Ghana's president. And so on this, I'm not NPP supporter. I'm not an NDC supporter. I'm a Ghanaian. Yeah. And as a Ghanaian journalist and writer, I think I have a duty to my listeners and also to my journalistic background to have a critical analysis and do a critical take on the legacy of Ghana's current president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who became Ghana president on January 7, 2017, after winning the 2016 election. So, this is not bashing the president. Like I say, this is using my journalistic hat to give you a critical analysis and assessment of the 8 years of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Okay, and we will, as part of our analysis and assessment, we'll look at different aspects of the, you could say, the indices or the socio-economic indices that a president should and must be judged upon during his time in office. Okay, so not in any particular order. Today, we're going to look at the economy, governance, jobs, corruption, and agriculture. So this will feature in part 1 of the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo. And so in 2016, during the election campaign, you know, the mantra was changed because there had been 8 years of NDC, and that people got tired of the NDC because the NDC had plunged the country into a power crisis that they call Dumso in the Tree language, Dumso, which means on, off. Dum means off, so means on. So off, on is what, the then opposition, Nana Akufo-Addo, used as justification for why people in Ghana should vote for him. Again, the economy was in a bad shape, in 2016. You think it's bad now? It wasn't as bad in 2016, and that's something we'll come on to later when we look at the economy. So the economy was another key issue as to why, Ghanaians decided to vote for Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in 2016, because he himself said that, we live in a land of plenty, but, we are still poor. So in Chi, he was saying that, Oman inye ohiamai, it is castle in so. He also mentioned about the, economy, saying that, because the cedi back then was about 4.2 to a dollar, and the GDP debt ratio at the time was about 57%. That showed the incompetence of the NDC and the Mahama, and that if Ghanaians were to give him the nod, then he had the men, i.e., in this case, his vice president, Alhaji Mahmoud Bamia, would be the head of the economic management team, and he would be the one with his team who would actually address the mess that Ghana was economically in 2017. And so this was why, Ghanaians voted in droves for Nana Akufo-Addo, because he had a big majority. That meant that the 2016 election did not need to go to a second round. So he won a big majority, whereby he got more than 51% of the vote, and the then President Mahama got 44%. And so this ushered in Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo as being the president of Ghana, starting January 2017. And so when we look at the economy, for myself and many, many others, this is what, Nana Akufo-Addo will be judged the most, the economy, how he dealt with the economy. And unfortunately, those promises that he made in 2016, he has failed to live up to those promises. So, as you know, in other podcasts I've done, throughout the last couple of years about Ghana's economy and about the cost of living crisis in Ghana, you know that the economy in Ghana is in a very, very, very bad shape. And this is not, like I said, it is irresponsible to lay the blame for Ghana's economic woes simply because of the COVID pandemic and also the Russia-Ukraine war. Because like I said on another podcast, that the World Bank, as early as spring 2019, warned Ghana that the levels of borrowing was too much, that it is not sustainable. And so it is not the Russia-Ukraine war or COVID that has put Ghana's economy out of sync. It is wanton, irresponsible, reckless borrowing and also mismanagement of the economy of Ghana that has led it to the economy that we have now. To the extent that now, this government, who said that they will never go to the IMF to get a loan, a bailout, went to the IMF last year, 2023, to seek, a loan or financial assistance from the IMF in order to help it, A, balance its books, and also B, more importantly, debt restructure. And I'll come to debt restructure in more detail in part 2 of looking at Nana Addo's legacy, because the debt restructure, I don't think a lot of Ghanaians really understand the severe impact of what the debt restructuring program, how Ghanaians are going to be impacted for that. But like I said, I'll leave that for part 2. But the economy of Ghana is in a very, very, very bad way. When this government came into office, January 2017, it was roughly 4.2 cedis to a dollar. 4.2. Yeah? Today, as I'm talking to you, the 27th of June, 2023, when this podcast has been recorded, it is 15.5 to a dollar. Yeah? So it's appreciated under this government by more than 300%. Yeah? Within this 8-year period, between 2017, 8 years here, between 2017 and 2024, the cedi has been, in essence, devalued by more than 300%. In actual fact, according to Bloomberg and other reputable sources, the cedi was the worst performing currency in the world in 2022, losing a colossal 52.4% of its value. Yeah? So that alone, the devaluation of the cedi, that alone, right, is enough to say that this government has messed up when it comes to the economy. Because the cedi devaluation alone has meant, yeah, and this is a key thing that Ghanaians need to really understand, devoid of any parties, right, that Ghanaians are worse off today, June 2024, than what they were even in June 2022. Because in June 2022, it was 8 cedis, roughly 8.5 to a US dollar. So even in a year and a half, or let's say 2 years, in 2 years, the currency has nearly doubled from 8.5 to 15.5 within 2 years. So Ghanaians are worse off today than what they were even when Nana Addo was president 2 years ago. Let alone 2017, when the dollar was 4.2, when the cedi was 4.2 to a dollar. So Ghanaians are much, much worse off today, 2024, than they were in 2017. So in a short space of time, 7 years, Ghanaians have seen the value of its currency basically skyrocket. You could say in essence, right, the cedi is not really, is basically a worthless currency. But like I mentioned before, Ghanaians themselves are partly to blame for this because, there's too much dollarization of the economy. So things like school fees, you want to buy a house in Ghana, you want to buy a brand new car, you want to pay for hotel accommodation, you want to pay for your child's school fees, particularly in these so-called international schools. Yeah, you want to um hire a hotel room, particularly in some of these 4-5 star hotels. They all are paid for in US dollars. So yeah, so this mentality that Ghanaians have, whereby they want to charge key things in US dollars, that is also having a massive impact on the currency, because people have to buy dollars with their cedi to pay for school fees, to buy a car, to buy a house, to rent a property, particularly in affluent area, to rent a hotel room, particularly for special occasions in Christmas or whatever. And so this, dollarization in certain aspects of the Ghanaian economy is also why the Ghana cedi has depreciated against the dollar, particularly in the last 2 years. Yeah. And the government has not done really anything concrete to ensure that the cedi is stable. All that they've done, yeah, is actually have a policy of buying US dollars. So they borrow money, right? So rather than borrow money to invest in infrastructure, they've borrowed money to buy US dollars in order to prop up the cedi. So that has been an artificial way of how, the cedi was stabilized between 2017 and about 2018, 2019. And since 2019, particularly in the last 2 years, the cedi has just exploded because that policy has not worked and government has not been able to find a robust strategic strategy in order to keep or make the Ghana cedi a more stronger and therefore more stable currency. And like I said before, one of my recommendations would be that Ghana gets gold reserves. Ghana is the biggest producer of gold in Africa, but yet does not have that much gold reserves. And so if Ghana wants to prop up its currency and make the cedi strong against the external shocks and also against the major currencies like the pound, the US dollar, the euro, then Ghana must have gold reserves that they can use to prop up the currency in times like what we are living now. Again, if you look at the economy, and again, this is something I mentioned next week in the part 2 of the legacy, the cost of living crisis. So the economy in Ghana has got to that level now that there is a rampant cost of living crisis in Ghana. Rents have doubled in the last 2 years. Food has tripled, quadrupled in the last 2 years. Transportation costs has gone up by at least 200% in the last 3 to 4 years. Yeah, and I can go on and on and on. And this has had a profound effect on the quality of life for many Ghanaians. Yeah, and this is also hampering, any recovery that Ghana was to have after COVID. Again, we look at interest rates in Ghana. Interest rates in Ghana are the highest in the continent. Just do a quick Google search. Don't even listen to this podcast. Don't believe what I'm saying. Go and do a quick Google search, i.e., interest rates in Africa, and you will see by far that Ghana has the highest rates of interest on the continent. Right now in Ghana, right, interest rates are about approaching 40%, roughly where they were when this government first came in. But this government said that they would actually reduce interest rates that will make borrowing more easier. In actual fact, interest rates in Ghana are very high, 40%. So if a business wants to go and borrow money, or an individual wants to go and borrow money, yeah, they're gonna have to pay upwards of 40% in order to secure that loan. Yeah. Now, what business, right, are you gonna conduct that will give you a return of 40% that you would need to pay that loan? This is a situation that many Ghanaian businesses find themselves in, and even some of the big boys. And even on that, as a butchers to say how the economy is how bad it's doing, recently I did a podcast telling you about some of them, the big companies that have left Ghana. Big, Dark and Lovely, SSB Bank, and many other big multinational companies have left Ghana in the last year and a half because of these, the cost of doing business and the cost of business in Ghana. So, for example, rent. Yeah, business rates are very, very high in Ghana. Add to that your electricity. And again, because of Dumso, Dumso will be in part 2 of the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo. Yeah, high electricity tariffs has compelled many businesses to leave Ghana. And also on that electricity, again, many businesses have folded because of the high tariffs of utility, particularly electricity, that have been charged in Ghana. And again, in part 2, I'll talk about the power crisis that has affected Ghana, particularly since December last year. Another bad legacy of the president of Ghana. And so when we look at the economy is in a very, very bad way. And this is Ghanaians are living through right now. Ghanaians, doesn't matter whether the MPP, NDC, CPP, PNC, Butterfly Movement, Cheddar Man's movement, right? Every Ghanaian is feeling the pinch. In actual fact, this is the worst economy in the last 40 years, and definitely in this Fourth Republic. That was ushered in January 1992 rather. This is the worst set of economic figures that this country, Ghana, had to grapple with. Many people are struggling. And so the economy is in a very, very dire situation. And this is because of the mismanagement of the economy by Nana Akufo-Addo government and his economic mismanagement team, led by the current flag bearer, Mahamudu Bawumia. And so, the economy is a legacy which is going to haunt this particular government. Now, we look at jobs. Again, this government came into power on the promise of creating jobs. So, again, another mantra of the government was that we will create jobs, because under the last NDC government, not the main jobs were created. Even though you had JIDA, you had a lot of youth empowerment programs, etc., there still were not that many jobs out there. And so this government came in 2017, promising Ghanaians a golden age of employment. The reality, despite many numerous initiatives like the NACOB, which is like a youth program, yeah, aimed at the youth to give youth in Ghana, employment skills. Despite that, despite things like planting for food and jobs, despite the national service, despite a number of initiatives aimed at, creating jobs in Ghana, that these initiatives, unfortunately, have not worked. And this is why today in Ghana, there is mass unemployment. Yeah. And this is why a lot of youth, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, have left Ghana, because there's no work in Ghana. And as I mentioned before in one of my podcasts, why Ghanaian youth are leaving Ghana? Jobs. Lack of jobs is the key reason why many Ghanaian youth are leaving Ghana, because there's no job in Ghana. Unless your father is well heeled, unless your mother is well connected, right? Unless you can get, those connections in Ghana. Doesn't matter how brilliant you are, right? You will never get a job in Ghana. And so many of our youth, because they haven't got, contacts or connections, their mom or dad haven't got these connections. Many of our youth see their future, see no hope in Ghana. And this is why, over the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of Ghanaians, particularly Ghanaian youth under 35, have left Ghana, come to, North America, come to Europe, places like the UK, etc. A lot of Ghanaians have migrated in the last 3 or 4 years. And this is a direct result of the fact that the job creation, as touted by Nana Akufo-Addo, has basically failed to yield fruit. Yeah, because unemployment is a ticking time bomb in Ghana that is stubbornly high. And, despite all the noises, despite all the initiatives, this government has failed when it comes to creating jobs. Yeah. And a lot of youth in Ghana have even started their own jobs because of the dire, unemployment, high unemployment in Ghana. And so when we look at jobs per se, the government of Nana Akufo-Addo has failed miserably, when it comes to creating long-term, meaningful, career-orientated, career development jobs, whereby Ghanaian youth will see no need to leave Ghana and come to Europe and North America. Yeah, so the collective failure of the government of Nana Akufo-Addo to create the enabling environment, both within the public sector and private sector, yeah, to create those jobs has been an anathema to the governance of the current president. And so from jobs, we move on to governance. Again, the governance of this Nana Akufo-Addo government has been very, very, unsavory. I'll give you two examples. Because of the dire nature of the economy that I've just mentioned, and other social, macroeconomic indices, many Ghanaian journalists, the famous one being Captain Smart, have talked openly about the difficulties that Ghanaians are facing and how unbearable in some quarters life is for the older Ghanaian. And so because they've said this, right, a number of Ghanaian journalists have been put in prison or have been silenced by this government because they dare to speak truth to power. They dare speak their mind. Yeah. And that's not good governance. Good governance is allowing free speech. Yeah. As long as that speech is not insulting, as long as that, speech is not hateful speech. Yeah. As long as that speech is a critical analysis, critical assessment of the current situation in Ghana, then there's no need to jail people just because they disagree with your policy or they disagree with the way that you've been managing the country. That's not on. And under this Nana Akufo-Addo government, intolerance is like a buzzword. And so the governance, the style of governance, which some say has even been autocratic, has been a damper legacy of the Nana Akufo-Addo government. Again, in terms of governance, and again, even links to this issue about corruption, because again, corruption is something that I mentioned in part 2 of the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo. Corruption has been, a cancer in this government in the last 8 years. And because of poor leadership, poor governments, corruption has been allowed to fester. Yeah, and no one's been put behind bars. But like I said, next week I'll go into it deeper as to why corruption, is a bad legacy of the current president. So, governance, which goes hand in hand with leadership, yeah, has been very, very bad under Akufo-Addo. Even a last one of governments. This whole issue about illegal mining, and again, I'll talk about that in detail, in depth next week. Lack of leadership is why illegal small-scale mining, called galamsey in local language, has been allowed to fester, and because of that, it is actually posing a threat to the very, nature of Ghana. But again, I'll go deep into that in part 2 of the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo. And so, governance has been a very, very, poor in Ghana, and that is a legacy of this current government under this current president. Now, You move on to agriculture. Agriculture, again, was another mantra that this government said it would do when come to power in January 2017. And Nana Akufo-Addo, he made a point that, he would actually look into agriculture, so that Ghana can become more food sufficient. And this is why he had a policy called Planting for Foods and Jobs. But ask yourself, during the 7 to 8 years of this government and one of its flagship policies, Planting for Foods and Jobs, look at the state of agriculture in Ghana. The policy has failed to such an extent that Ghana is importing staple foods. So food that is easy to grow in Ghana, we're importing. Things like onion, tomatoes, corn millet, cassava, even yam. We are importing that from other countries. To the extent that now, food has become very, very expensive in Ghana. When 2-3 years ago, it wasn't like that. So it tells you what the policy to plant food and jobs has failed and failed miserably. Because if this policy was a success, you would see tangible evidence of this. Where were the farms where planting foods and jobs has transformed people's lives? It hasn't. There's been no transformational change in the agriculture policy of Ghana. And yet, we're supposed to have the Agriculture Development Bank, which was built by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, or which sole purpose was to provide cheap loans to Ghanaian farmers in order to help them boost their farms. So what's happened under this government when it comes to the Agriculture Development Bank and providing cheap loans to farmers? There's also been an issue with seedlings, to the extent that now we hear that these seedlings, can't even grow the food properly. And now, some Ghanaian farmers are resorting to genetically modified seeds. Now, anyone who knows about, genetically modified seeds, that is dangerous, particularly when it comes to Africa. Because even in Europe, large countries of Europe, right, have banned GMOs. But yet in Ghana, they want to impose GMOs on our farmers to say that it is the best way to guarantee food security when we use genetically modified seeds. Not knowing that those genetically modified seeds will destroy the fertile nature of our soil, and that will make it difficult to grow food organically, meaning that Ghana will never be food secure. And so, under this legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo, agriculture sector is struggling in Ghana. Like I said, we are importing basic foodstuff, yam, tomato, onion, cassava from other countries. To the extent that now, food inflation, and that is why inflation is so high in Ghana. Again, that's another legacy of the economy. Inflation right now in Ghana, right, peaked at 55%, December 2022. Inflation is now 25%, which is still very high, because when they inherited the economy, January 2017, inflation was at 15.4%. You can't blame COVID and Russia-Ukraine war, because, again, if you look at other African countries, Togo, next door, Burkina Faso, next door, Cameroon, Mali, La Côte d'Ivoire, all these countries have inflation half of Ghana's. So Ghana's at 25%. All these countries I mentioned have inflation under 15%. So that tells you that it's not the Russia-Ukraine war or the COVID pandemic. It is something more closer to home. It is the mismanagement of the agriculture sector that has created food inflation. And for me, food inflation is more than 200%. You go to market, you ask people in Ghana, when they go to market on Monday to buy yam, that yam is 5 cedis. By the end of the week, that yam is 30 Ghana cedis. And you want to tell me that food inflation is 25% or 20%? No, no. If you look at the bag of rice, even 5 kilogram bag of rice, that has doubled in the last 2 years. And look at price of tomatoes, that's tripled in the last 2 years. You look at a bag of onions, that's tripled in the last 2 years. You look at maize, corn, that's quadrupled in the last 3 years. So food inflation is very, very high indeed in Ghana. And this is as a result of a bad and misplaced agriculture policy that this government has implemented, not really understanding the needs of our farmers and not supplying farmers with i.e. subsidies that they need in order to make Ghana food sufficient. And finally, on this issue of agriculture, Ghana is not food secure right now because we have to import food. And that food that we're importing, particularly meat and what have you, right, is not good for us. And also, right, we're giving money to other farmers, whereby we're starving our own farmers of food by not subsidizing and not supporting our own farmers. And so, and again, because of this, food crisis, because of the failure of the planting food and jobs, many Ghanaians cannot afford 3 square meals a day, simply because they can't afford to buy food in the market. The astronomical prices that they're charging in the market for basic foodstuffs, meaning that many Ghanaians are going without decent meal, decent 3 meals a day. And even to compel this, the school feeding program, that was designed to ensure that particularly those children who are not well off, they would have at least a decent meal in school. Even that, I've heard many reports on Joy FM and other Ghanaian news portals that even the quality of food that have been given to Ghanaian school children, leaves not to be desired. You wouldn't even give it to your pet cat or dog. That's how bad, the food is, the quality of food is for our children going to, basic school and senior high school. So this all compels, that the government's agriculture policy has failed and failed miserably. When our children can't even get decent food to eat in school, that shows you how bad this government's policy of agriculture has been. And now the last subject for part one is corruption. So we are looking at corruption. So we've looked at the economy, looked at jobs, we've looked at governance and agriculture. Now we're going to wrap up part one of the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo, looking about corruption. He made a point, again, during 2016 election, that under Muhammad, corruption was at epic proportions, and that when he come, no, corruption will find no place in his government, and that if you want to be rich, then don't be part of my government. But corruption under Nana Akufo-Addo has, increased 100-fold. It even makes Muhammad's corruption like small fry. The corruption under Nana Addo government has been huge. And I can give you many, many examples, but I'll just put 2 examples. The cedi affair, whereby, her maid stole more than $1 million from a property. And apparently, during the investigation, there was something about 300,000 euros and about 48 million Ghana cedis, right, which is about $3 million, stashed in the property. Now, if that's not corruption, I don't know what is, because Ceci Depay is a minister of state, or was a minister of state. What money is she earning from being a minister of state? With the perks and not the perks, what money is she earning to enable her to stash that amount of money in her house? Because she knows that if she went to a bank to put that money, the bank would be asking questions like, Madam, where's the source of this income? And because, there's something fishy going on, she may not be able to account for those sums of money. So that money is being stored in her house to the extent that her maid stole some of the money from her. And so corruption in Ghana, that's an example of ministerial. That is even one former small prime minister. This is not the finance minister. This is not chief of staff. This is not, minister of tourism, minister of agriculture. This is a small time minister, who was caught with this money. Just imagine what other monies are being stolen, by other people. And as a result of stolen money, you're not able to wash it out. The only way you can wash out stolen money is by not putting it in the bank, but to build property. And so there's been the property boom over the last 4 or 5 years in Ghana because of this allegedly stolen money that has been washed away by politicians into the real estate sector. And talk about corruption in Ghana, even the special prosecutor, whose job it is, Kisi Ajibing, whose job it is to investigate corrupt activities. He himself is being targeted by the Office of the Presidency for the work he's doing. So this shows you that the fight against corruption has been very, very poor under this government, to the extent that there's a nickname for the president that he's a clearing agent for corruption. That's not my saying. That is saying that's going around within circles of Ghana, be it the NDC opposition or other circles within government, that this president has been a clearing agent for corruption. Telling you that under his watch, corruption has reached some gargantuan proportions. So, the president has failed to tackle corruption to the extent that nobody has been brought to book for their corrupt activities, let alone, face any jail term, let alone, being, gone under investigation for corrupt activities. So this government has shown, lack of political will to actually root out corruption, and corruption has thrived under this government. So that brings the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo part 1 to an end. We'll go in depth in part 2, look at some of the issues like Dumbuso, looking about Galamsey, looking about the domestic debt and external debt exchange programs, how those are going to, have a massive impact on the country in the next few years. We'll delve more into that in part 2, looking at the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo. And so if you've enjoyed this special edition of Ghana in Focus, please share to your friends, your family, social media networks. Please subscribe to Ghana Africa in Focus on YouTube and also on Spotify. And like I said, please donate to the show to help us continue our great work, bringing you fantastic content from Ghana and also from the African continent. All right, so for myself, Kwame, and from all the crew here on Ghana in Focus, is thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next week for part 2 of the legacy of Nana Akufo-Addo.